Super Westbrook continued his dominant stretch last night, scoring 43 points, but he did mess around and get a triple-double as the Thunder lost to the Bulls 108-105 after E'Twaun Moore, the unlikely hero out of Purdue, scored an amazing game-winning shot. Kevin Durant has missed 35 games this year, while Westbrook continued to show how special he can be. But the question is, whose team is it for your Thunder? Freddie, go first.
I'll tell you what, that guy continues to amaze each and every night. I mean, we talked about being in the MVP conversation. He keeps pushing himself further and further into it. I don't think he's at the lead, but he's nearing that leading pack. I don't think it has to be anyone's team in Oklahoma City. Here's why I say that. Russell Westbrook clearly understands that people are always going to try to separate Kevin Durant and himself. Well, it has to be your team. It has to be his team. And he said every time we hear those conversations, we hear that chatter, it brings us closer together as brothers. We want to win. We're not interested in this has to be your team or this has to be my team. So my thought process is if both of these guys are on board of making sure it's not about you got to get more shots. I have to get more shots. If we're winning basketball games, that's all that matters. This whole thing that you need a leader of a team, you need a guy to follow, that may not be the deal anymore. Not just in the NBA, but in professional sports. Because if you're winning and guys are making plays, to me, that's all the leadership I need. I don't think Russell Westbrook is more or less of a leader based on what we've seen from him with Kevin Durant being out for 35 games and putting this team on his shoulders. So I don't think it needs to be a Russell Westbrook team or a Kevin Durant team. Both of these guys are going to continue to show the way with their work ethic, with the way that they go out there and give their 100% all the time. It shouldn't be a Russell team or a Kevin Durant team. It's both of their team or anybody else that wants to join their party.
Chris, do we need that designation, though? Does it matter?
No, I don't think we need that. I mean, I think sometimes we do a disservice to teams when we say it's his team or her team. Now, sometimes it's obvious. The Cavaliers are LeBron's team.
Right.
The Jordan Bulls were Michael Jordan's team. When there's such a difference between the talent level of the best player and everyone else, even the next star, then it's clearly the leader's team. But in this situation, it's kind of like the Showtime Lakers. Not that I'm not comparing them to Magic and Kareem, but Magic and Kareem were both maybe the two of the top 3 players ever.
Right.
Whose team was that? You know, I mean, Magic was, the leader because of his personality and stuff.
Cap was
but
there before.
Kareem,
Cap was there,
exactly,
right.
and a 6-time MVP. So I think it's more like that. These two are so close. They're both superstars that it doesn't have to be either team. It's going to be more like, if they win championships, it's going to be like Westbrook and Durant and Westbrook, just like Kobe and Shaq.
Right.
You know, you don't necessarily say it. Some people think Shaq's team, but really, Kobe was getting busy too, just as much as Shaq. And Shaq didn't win it without Kobe. So I think it's more like that. Now, that said, it's going to kind of, I mean, Russell, because he's got the ball in his hands, he already shoots more than Durant.
Right.
Okay? He's he's a stronger personality, more aggressive, more of a chip on his shoulder, more energetic. I think he's the dominant personality on that team.
That doesn't mean he's the best leader,
those two. No.
Right.
Because, I mean, even in Miami, we say it was LeBron's team, but Wade was the leader.
Right.
I mean, they're both leaders. But LeBron was the better player.
But Steve, I want to ask you, do you think there's a strong distinction here, and does it matter for you?
It really doesn't matter for me, and I think Chris makes a great point about us doing a disservice, but we have to understand the culture of sports almost conditions us to think that way. As you come through every sport, there's always somebody who's always placed as a leader of the team. If you come up in baseball, who's the leader, who's the captain of that team? If you come up in football, there's always somebody throughout your process of getting involved in sports, even when you get to professional level, that is conditioned to be the leader. And so that's the way they think. They think that way. It's hard to break that inside of this, because very rarely do you get a situation like this. Very rarely do you get where there's 2 players that are at the apex that basically you have to almost atom split to see who that leader is. So OKC is one of those rare situations where you have 2 people at the top of the food chain that can share this position. And we do make a lot of it because we're conditioned to think that way. But here's the deal. At some point in time, and I said this back in the green room earlier, every team has a soul.
Yes.
And there's always that one person who is the soul of that team.
So who's
now, it may not be that best player. It may not be the leader.
It may not be that concrete either.
Right. And the functionality of how a team operates, even on the court and inside the locker room, always goes through one player most of the time. And in this situation, I think it's Westbrook.
Okay.
So now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's the main guy. That doesn't mean that he's the leader of this team. That doesn't necessarily mean it's his team. But the soul of that team, I think, is his, because inside of that locker room, when it's all over, if there's a group or team meeting, you know what I'm saying, and Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook are sitting at the table together, I'm pretty sure, and it goes to what your point about his personality, that Kevin may lean to Russ. Like, you know what? What do you think? I don't know if Russ is going to say, Kev, Russ doesn't have that what you think personality. He has that,
I'm doing what I'm about to do.
I'm going to do what's in the best interest of the team.
But to that point, I think it's different from that standpoint, because I think Russell will trust Kevin Durant enough.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant doesn't need to speak loudly to get his point across,
Right.
but Russell Westbrook, everybody respects him so much, they'll say, Kevin, this situation is going on. What do you think about that? And then they'll put it in place to make sure minefields don't continue to creep up with this.
I agree. I think they're different on the court, but I think mentally together, if you get them in that room, they actually think alike. I think their process of what they feel they both need to win, it goes through one another. And they're thinking like,
I don't know.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Because I think there's plenty of times we've seen in the past when Durant should be getting the rock late in the game, and he knows it.
Right.
And Westbrook hadn't been giving it to him. Now, I think that may
You haven't
change.
seen anything on the other end?
No, because Westbrook's got the rock.
Yeah.
Westbrook determines who's getting the shot. You know, so this is the thing. What you see with Westbrook lately, like last night, he was passing off. He took a ton of shots, but he also is getting guys involved. He's looking for guys as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Durant comes back. I'll say this quickly: if you have to say it's one person's team, check this out. They are 11-9 this season with Westbrook playing and not Durant. That's 55% of their wins.
Right.
Last year, when Westbrook was out, 36 games, 35 of those games Durant played.
Right.
They went 24-11. Okay, 68%.
Right.
So everybody's acting like, oh, Westbrook is now better than Durant.
He's not.
Durant, I still would take Kevin Durant. If I had to pick, I still say he's the second best player in the league
without question.
behind LeBron.
Remember this, they had Reggie Jackson last year that could step in for Westbrook. You don't find a Kevin Durant on that team that can step in and be Kevin Durant. That's why you see Russell Westbrook doing all these things. It was not saying it was easier to replace him, but at least they had a point guard that could organize things and get them organized and get Durant the basketball. You can't do that now, because who is Westbrook going to give the ball to as his Robin to his Batman? That person's not out there in Oklahoma City.
Let me say, we're talking about leadership. Here's a situation where we look at Chicago, where we know Derrick Rose, when he's healthy, is clearly the best player of the team. But who's the soul of that team?
Joakim Noah.
Right.
So
that's
out.
Is viewed nationally as Derrick Rose's team.
But my point is what we're talking about leadership, and I was talking about off the court also, in that locker room, in that team meeting. Who do the players think is the leader? We do a disservice to the leadership, but every team goes to that one person who's the soul of that team. Like I said, it's not necessarily the best players, it's not what do we win or lose with this guy. Who's that guy that we funnel everything through? In this situation, we're in Chicago, we don't know. It's Noah is that guy. They go to Noah, they lean on him. He's that entire personality and that dynamic on that team. Even though Noah looks at Rose, he looks at Poole and like, nah, he's still that dude. I still ride out with him. That's the soul of the team. And I think in this situation, it's so rare that we don't have to determine who the leader is. And that's why I think they think alike. I think they both together complement each other to a degree that they both are the soul of that team. And there's, at this one particular, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
But Freddie, let me just ask you real quick, to Westbrook, do you think it matters to him whose team it is? Just real quick.
He doesn't care. He just wants to win. I mean, I look at a guy like that, and I thought he got really sick and tired of people saying, you're just a one-man rogue guy caring about your stats. He's like, really? You haven't seen me play the way I play with Oklahoma City? He has never been about going for his. And we talk about all the points and what he's done. That's a design of the offense, because Scott Brooks plenty of times has a lot of trust in his ability. Hey, you know what? We need an energy play here. That guy can bring it to us. Not saying that Kevin Durant can't do it, but he looks at Russell Westbrook and says, hey, I know you can get yours. It's going to be hard for anybody to keep you from getting to the rim. That's why I thought what we've seen from him is that, you know what? I'm going to show you cats what I'm all about, but at the same time, he wasn't thrilled about losing by 3 points. The look on his face in that press conference, he's like, I don't care about points, anything like that. We had a chance to win this game. I didn't come through for my team. We didn't win, and that bothered him more than anything else.
Some people who know Westbrook well have told me
Yes, what is it?
It matters.
Yes.
to Russell.
That's what I would
That's
think.
the type of guy. Now, not in a bad way.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
like
right,
it
right,
matters to Kobe.
Right.
Just like it mattered to Michael.
Yeah.
Now, I think Durant, it doesn't matter. His personality is, he's a little closer like LeBron type personality. More laid back. You see him leading the MVP chants for Westbrook, cheering and all that. I don't think it matters to him. But Westbrook plays with a chip on his shoulder. He was upset coming out of the draft that he felt underestimating him. He has always felt people have underestimated him and sold him short. He's loving this opportunity to show everybody what he can do. And to him, and again, it's not a bad thing, but that's part of what fuels him. To him, I think it matters whose team it is, and that is his.
And maybe if there was a bigger gap in the talent between Russell Westbrook